The scene is set for Pert by night. The Tremere Primogen and Keeper of Elysium Rafat Dutta is meeting with Matthew Dodger. Still think is Matthew still a he's still a fledgling, isn't he, for the moment, or has he made it to neonate?
Yes.
Okay. So Rafat will let him into the trench. You see the security is still fairly tight. You recognise the mundane aspects anyway. Seeing as the Tremeres around the place, there could be God knows what not mundane stuff going on. But nothing that you've observed yet, unfortunately. Come in, Mr. Dodger. Please take a seat.
Thank you, Mr. Thank you, Mr. Dada, for seeing me on such short notice. And of course, he won't have offered his sidearm to the security officer on his way in.
There's no security officer on the way it's just approach. What you would have seen, there's a lot of different things in the area, just mechanical security devices and things like that. But it's like, okay. Well,
Oh,
first, before we continue on to new business, obviously when last we spoke, Isfan was here. Regarding teaching you Auspex, I'm willing to, but I will not be requiring training in any of the disciplines he's offering. I'd accept a minor boon for it, or perhaps you could some other arrangement.
certainly.
But
I have no objections.
okay. Now I'll have a word with Isfan first before we begin anything formally. Seeing as well, you are a fledgling of your clan. I know you two obviously get along well. I don't have to talk to Mr. Creel about such matters, but just so nobody's thinking I'm taking advantage or anything. But is there anything else you'd like to speak of?
As a matter of fact, yes, please. Um, I find myself in a bit of an awkward spot, as the prince has requested slash suggested that I have a look at a certain area, and out of character, I can't remember the name, but
Barrack
yes,
Square area.
yes, and I was wondering if you might be able to lend a hand or perhaps give some information. I, as you know, am not well versed in the occult. It wasn't part of my initial training as a private investigator.
Hmm.
I find
True.
myself somewhat out of my element.
Barrack Square. Let's see. Um. Unfortunately, that area is in the prince's domain now. Before I could have easily had access there, but let me see if I can remember anything. I'm gonna roll a occult test.
I, of course, have his permission to look into the area, and as long as I notify him in advance, I am permitted to seek aid as necessary.
Um. Well, let's see. He's going in that area. There's the park nearby. No doubt you heard that's one of the more attention-grabbing areas. But there's, well, I know there's a lot there of occult. Well, on the kind side, what we regard as occult significant. There's a lot of symbology in some of the structures. There's a lot of interaction by the Freemasons. There's a larger than normal number of them, their lodges and such in the city. It's
I did notice that as a matter of fact.
but if you look towards some of the things, I remember looking over some of the area. There's I could look into the matter a bit more, I suppose, but I know there's some symbology. You don't know there is a symbol of a swan. You'll notice if you look into some of the areas around the Black Pyramid, which of course has occult significance in of itself. Um, but the swan symbol, if one were to look at it from a different angle, is similar to the Eye of Ra, and of course all these rumors of Illuminati, that kind of thing. Though I've never held any stock in such things. I'm sure there's many. They're gentlemen's clubs with occult trappings, by
I
and large, normally. Nothing of any
I
significance.
yes, I had that in my initial report.
But I could look a little bit more from a distance, at least. I won't be going into the Prince's domain, but I'll look up a few more of my books, see if I can come up with something a bit more interesting. But there is, if you know what to look for, like I said, the pyramid, that kind of symbology, numerology, and such, all have a part to play. Usually, when the Freemasons get into play, I'll have a look, see if I can find any interesting patterns.
Thank you very much. As I mentioned, as long as I notify the prince, I am allowed to seek backup, if you'll pardon the uh, vernacular.
Of course. Um, which I understand to a degree, and I'll give you some little help. But obviously, the prince gave you the task. Unless you come across something that really is quite worrying, I'd rather you be able to take the opportunity to prove yourself, or well, not necessarily getting the Ancilla of the city involved. However, if you do need more occult assistance, there are one or two Tremere neonates in the city who might be able to, well, present an opportunity to catch the eye of the prince to them.
Hmm.
It's always possible. Um, but like I said, I'll look over, see if I can dig up anything from a distance. Is there anything else you wish to speak of?
Um, um, as as far as the minor boon, um, I would be happy to offer you some kind of future investigative service if you so happen to require, as that happens to be my bread and butter. Even if it's something as simple as doing a few checks on someone's background or something like that.
Well, it depends on the level. Minor boons are a little bit more involved, can take time, a bit of resources. But do remember that when you give a boon, you do not necessarily get to stipulate the grounds which it gets called in. Nor, if you grant me a boon, will I be the one calling it in. It might be some future point. Someone might accept me trading them that boon for payment for some kind of services rendered. Boons get traded. It's the way there are currency because money, money, its value is objective. Blood will, although access to blood is very useful, it is a short-term thing. It does not last forever. So
Hmm.
boons are a necessary currency for us.
That makes sense.
But yes, I'll well, if I have a boon from yourself, I'll be calling it in on something useful, something where your skill set would lie. I'm not going to be calling you in to do things that where your own skills do not apply as well.
Um, of course. I very much appreciate um your help, sir. It's as always very nice to be able to speak with you.
Of course.
And he'll tap the rim of his hat in respect. Is there anything else you wish to discuss with me?
At this time, no. I'm keeping occupied with a few different things. Keeping an eye on the Elysian. The Sabbat have, in their recent incursions, did not seem to go near it, but that doesn't mean that they didn't try. So I'm keeping an eye in that direction. But fortunately, it seems they hadn't uncovered its location, so would have to go moving it, fortunately.
If if you wouldn't mind my making a rudimentary observation,
Yes.
given my experiences in Vancouver, it would appear to me that this was rather simple in nature. Uh, I've only heard the grimmest whispers of an incident involving the prince and perhaps another thing about the city. It didn't seem nearly as big and loud as it usually would from them.
Well, I'm not sure if you heard, but there was a biker gang that attacked the hospital. That was a bit more, well, standard fare in some ways, but those appeared to be new recruits, I suppose you could say, that they had acquired along the way. And, well, they were more discreet in almost ways, but I think they perhaps underestimated the kindred of Perth. I think they thought the cart was new and untested, so
Hmm.
perhaps they thought that a very simple, blunt approach might shatter any resolve.
And of course, they weren't counting on yourself or Uncle Istvan or the prince for that matter.
No, no, they seem to have not quite. Well, Istvan, I'm not sure of his entire backstory, but he seems to put no small amount of emphasis in his training towards combat.
You know,
Uh,
I did one training match with him a while back, and in 2 shots he almost put me into torpor.
yes, we have to be careful with that. Not use not use edged weapons, that kind of thing. But
Oh no, this was his bare fist.
well, that would be a problem as well. Um, you've got to remember that Sheriff Salvador, the Prince, myself, Mr. Valiente, James Pierce, although we're the only ones who have remained in the city and survived, we helped take the city from the Anarchs. Though we were experienced, I was glad the Prince was there. He's perhaps more of a more finesse than brute force in his combat style,
Hmm.
which works out quite well because sometimes, well, individuals think they can just force the issue.
Well, that's yeah. Um, Actually, now that I think of it, sir, could you fill me in on maybe some of the more recent news among our society? I tend to get wrapped up in my work so much I forget to ask.
Well, I've been a little bit out of the loop since the Sabbat had attacked. Like I said, keeping an eye on a few different things. But when they attacked initially, there was the attack at the hospital, though we had received some forewarning. Um, and well, they were drawn into an area where we were able to fight them unseen. They Well, things were going relatively well. Um, Primaging Creed of the Gangrel was able to down a few. You've probably heard of the prowess of the abilities of Protean. Makes them quite formidable. And, well, when things were still going, we had Sheriff Salvador showed up and, well, helped hit him from behind. They tried to retreat at that point, but didn't get particularly far. At that day, there was Gangrenose Dr. Claw was another one there. Um, we also had the Toreador Primogen, Mr. Bagger. And I'm just trying to remember if there's any more off the top of my head. Bagger.
Dr. Doolittle.
Dr. Doolittle Klanganger was also there. And I was there myself. But we managed to take a couple of them in torpor, managed to stake one or two of them, and prepared to do questioning in regards to them. And, well, apparently they were dealing with the Nagaraji, what previously heard was kicked from the city, and the Giovanni, which is interesting in itself. While we were questioning them, though, they seemed to narrow down the location we were at. Um, Sheriff Salvador's safety measures gave us a little bit of forewarning. His domain's quite large, so indicating we had some small bit of time to prepare.
He seems like a very capable sheriff.
He was in Asila before he came to the city. Some of us have been raised in status after the conquest of the city, or just shortly after. So he was there for quite some time. I remember initially suggesting him for sheriff. I suppose he's a man who enjoys his exhilaration. As a kindred, he's, well, focused, but I suppose at times he's quite lighthearted. In a good way. But I don't think he's of a political bent. But he gets involved in politics as much as anyone has to. You always have to get involved to some degree.
Certainly. There wasn't a matter that it's a rather delicate one, so I'm not really sure how to proceed. See, I had the pleasure of spending an evening with a member of your clan. Her name is, or rather, she goes by Fixit.
Yes.
A very pleasant woman, shall we say? But she had asked me to look into something for her. Naturally, I'm hesitant to do this because, or rather, I'm hesitant to do this in the wrong way. But she seems to believe that our prince means to do her and her coterie harm in some form or degree.
I'm going to be rolling. Something to like, what the fuck? I know you're being serious, but Rafat's like, what the fuck? I see. I'll have a word with the prince, and I'll have a word with her coterie. Don't worry about it. Well, obviously I'm on good terms with the prince, but also she's a member of my clan. If there's any problems, I think she's well, I know her initial encounters with the prince, she was very nervous.
Out
So
of character, sorry. Did you happen to see the date scene that we did?
nope, I haven't. I generally don't watch too many scenes.
Okay. If you wouldn't mind, could I get you to just have a look and notice the text message that Dr. Claw sends me at the end?
Okay, I'll look at that later on. So,
The the reason I come to you is I got after I spoke with her on our way back from our movie. Like she she did really honor the company for the movie, which was very nice. Um, she that's when I first truly noticed that she was very afraid of the prince, and then I got this very strange email, or not email, text message, extremely shortly after we'd spoken, which caused me some alarm because I thought something might be in the process of happening. So I went back to investigate and get her to um, confirm for me that she did send it. But if you if you have a look, it 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 doesn't exactly sound like her, and it doesn't fall in keeping with someone that demonstrates that level of fear.
did it did the sender claim to be her? As he says to look through it. Well, do you mind if I take a copy of this? I'll look into this person.
Cer- Certainly not, sir.
Rafat will take off a copy. He'll write it down exactly what was said. Um, well, I'd appreciate it if you are discreet about this till I can look into the matter. Um,
Oh, of of course. I I thought it would be prudent to speak to you about it first.
well, I'll look into it and get back to you.
Thank you
But
very much.
given this, I best get looking. Is there anything else you want to speak of before I go investigate?
Just just very briefly, if I may,
Yes.
uh, I I'm not looking to get Miss Fixit into any trouble. I don't under under the circumstances as a private investigator, I do take client confidentiality quite seriously. But being a private investigator slash vampire, I I'm trying to find a balance. Do you know what I mean, sir?
Yes, there's always the affairs of the court, the nightly games. They're always going to influence how one must go about things. Our society has such a way about it.
So, I mean, if at all possible, I would be greatly appreciative if if you might be able to look rather gently on her, as I don't think she means any real harm. I think she's just scared.
I'll be straightforward. I know she had expressed some concerns before to me, but not on this kind of a scale. Perhaps there's been some incident I don't know of. But I'll make some discreet inquiries with the prince and then with herself,
Thank you very much. If you'll excuse me, sir.
of course. And with that, we'll end our scene.